Canadian snowbirds are flying the coop, and they're selling their U.S. vacation homes in droves.
Would you trade 20-degree weather during this time of year for this? Minus 24 degrees? Well, for some snowbirds, they say yes.
Last year, Canadians made up 13% of all foreign homebuyers in the United States, spending over $5.9 billion, that's billion with a B, dollars purchasing homes. But things are changing. And that's why in this video, I wanted to talk to you about why they were buying homes in the first place, why they are now selling, and more importantly, what impact that may have on the housing market going into this year and beyond. Now, before we look at why Canadians were buying here in the first place, we need to look at the history of Canadian ownership in the U.S., because that will give us the clues. And Canadians have been buying properties in the U.S. for decades, but most notably in the 80s and 90s is really where we saw a significant surge, partly because the exchange rates were extremely attractive. And that, combined with the appeal of warm weather climates in the South Coast U.S., was super attractive to snowbirds wanting to get out of the very cold, snowy winters of Canada. Now, if we fast forward to the 2000s, we had a major real estate boom happening here in the U.S., and it was very easy to get real estate loans. It's one of the reasons why we had the great financial crisis in the first place. But the loonie, the Canadian dollar, also hit an all-time high in 2007 of $1.10. And that, combined with the ease of getting mortgages, brought even more Canadian vacationers and snowbirds into the U.S. Now, the great financial crisis had some serious negative effects on the U.S., but the Canadians took advantage of that as well. Because when the market shifted in 2008 and properties plummeted upwards towards 35% across the country, then again, the Canadians came across the border, started taking advantage of these undervalued properties. Because it also was super attractive. The affordable housing situation in places like Vancouver and Toronto were not pleasant. It was very, very challenging. And at the time, the U.S., because of those property adjustments, those value adjustments, offered a lot of relief for affordable housing that the Canadians were struggling with. And that continued right through the 2010s. The Canadian dollar was aligned with the U.S. dollar, and in 2011, 2012, we had a record number of Canadian buyers. 24% of all foreign buyers were Canadians purchasing property in the U.S. And the Canadians have continued buying over the years, and like I mentioned earlier, in 2024, Canadians made up 13% of all foreign home buyers. Oh, Canada! They spent $5.9 billion last year purchasing homes. And where were they buying? Well, 20% of them were buying in Florida, 13% were buying in Texas, 11% were buying in California, 5% were buying in Arizona, and 4% were purchasing in Georgia. Now, why have they been buying all this property over the years? Are they trying to stage a national takeover of our country? No. They like the weather. And that's one of the reasons why they've been coming over the border, is to take advantage of our warmer climates during their snowy winters. But another reason is because of 55 plus communities. In Florida, there are a lot of resort type communities with amenities and pools and shuffleboard and pickleball and all the things. And Canada was in short supply. So they didn't have those offerings. They didn't have a lot of 55 plus offerings. So they could come over here, and it was like a twofer. They get some nice weather and a lot of amenities at the same time. The other reason was because of the investment. For the longest time, the Canadian dollar was aligned with the US dollar, and the state of the housing market allowed it to be a really good investment. They could buy properties here, stay here for the winter, rent it for the rest of the year, and make some money. It'll pay for itself. So it was a wise business decision. And then the last reason is because historically, the United States has had lower property taxes and a lower cost of living. It has been more affordable to live in the United States than Canada. You can buy more property and Couple that with the fact that Florida and Texas does not have an income tax. So when you look at income from rental properties after they've lived, they come down for snowbirds and then they rent it out for 6 months out of the year, and you don't have to pay income tax on that income. That adds to the attractiveness of the real estate investment. So there's a lot of good reasons why they've been buying properties. But the tide is shifting and the flock is starting to sail. They're starting to go back north. And there has been a massive exodus of Canadians selling properties. Now let's dig into why that's actually happening.
With our dollar hitting a 20-year low, more Canadian snowbirds are listing their American properties due to the increased cost of living.
Now, one of the main reasons why Canadians are selling their homes is actually one of the reasons why they bought here in the first place. And it has to do with rising costs and inflation. It was super affordable. It is not affordable now. We have rising insurance costs because of natural disasters. Some insurance policies have gone up 3 times over the past year. Property taxes have gone through the roof. I've done videos and live streams about these. Property taxes for some homeowners have gone up 30 to 60% over the last several years. And property taxes are based on values. So as the property values go up, so do property taxes. So we won't be seeing any kind of reprieve on that for some time. We also have HOAs. All these vacation properties, snowbird type properties that have amenities, all come with HOAs. And HOAs have gone through the roof largely in part because of maintenance. You have certain situations like the condo situation in Florida, which has caused HOA fees to go astronomically through the roof because of repairs, necessary repairs that are required to keep those buildings safe, and new requirements by the counties to make sure that people, stay safe and those buildings are paid for. But the overall rising cost of not only that, but the cost of living. The cost of living, whether you're talking eggs, Canadians eat eggs too, the cost of groceries, the cost of gas, everything has just gone through the roof. It's just too stinking expensive for them, and it's just no longer a good investment in real estate for them here. Now, when they might have been able to weather the storm because the currency rates were 1-to-1, they were keeping up with the American dollar, that's another reason why they're leaving. The currencies for the loonie, the Canadian dollar, has gone loony, and it's gone down in the toilet. As of today, it's 69 cents. It is really, really challenging. The Canadian dollar has lost a lot of value to the US dollar, so it doesn't go as far. So it costs them almost twice as much for those eggs down here. We think we're spending a lot of money. Yeah, they're spending a lot more because their dollar doesn't go as far. In fact, the Canadian dollar has actually been losing value since 2021. But it's not just the currency that's an issue, it's also tax implications that are digging into their wallets. Canada has a new foreign-owned real estate tax rule that actually puts a heavier burden on Canadians and costs them more money. It taxes them more if they own property in the US. There's also the issue of capital gains. Not only do they have to pay capital gains in Canada, but they also pay capital gains in the United States. So all of these things combined are making it extremely expensive and unaffordable for Canadians to hold on to those properties. Now, I have definitely seen a change with Canadian home sellers. Very often I will have folks reach out to me for referrals. I have a very extensive, vetted out referral network that I've been building for the past 30 years of all the top agents, the 20% agents, I like to call them. And folks will reach out to me, viewers will reach out to me and ask me to connect them with one of those agents. And over the last 6 months, I have absolutely seen an uptick in Canadian home sellers that are looking to sell and not purchase another property. They're looking to sell and go back to Canada and regroup. But it's interesting to see that migration. Now, if you are one of these Canadians and you need a referral, you can click the link below. But if you're not a Canadian and you're thinking about selling or buying, please feel free to reach out. You fill out the short form, I'll get in touch with you. I'll send you another email. Keep an eye on your inbox because I'll need some more information to make sure I connect you with not any agent, but the right agent. But as time goes on, it's very interesting to see how many folks are reaching out that are looking to get out of this country. Adding to the inventory, not a bad thing. Yes. Now, another reason why they're leaving is healthcare. Healthcare has become ridiculously expensive in this country, and Canadian homeowners are not entitled to Medicare or Medicaid. They have to buy private insurance. And as a self-employed individual for the last almost 30 years, I can tell you private insurance is expensive. Very expensive. And when you're dealing with the cost of private insurance versus the cost of eggs, the cost of eggs is nothing. Cost of private insurance, especially if you have any kind of medical conditions, can add up very quickly. And then there's the issue of the housing market. The housing market in the states that they primarily buy properties in, if you're looking at Florida and Texas and Arizona, those areas are starting to see a housing shift. Inventory is starting to rise, prices are starting to level out, and the Canadians see this as an opportunity to sell out to avoid a major correction. They want to cash out, get while the getting's good, so to speak. Cash in their chips before they lose that value. So the housing market is definitely a driver. And then lastly, we have to acknowledge the political tensions. Right now, at this moment in time, the relationship is very strained between the Canadians and the United States. You can't ignore that. And then you couple that with a very anti-immigrant sentiment across the countries, particularly when you get into the areas of the southern regions of the state. That's where the immigration issue is most prominent. And when you are an immigrant and your country is has a little bit strained relationship with the country that you have this property in, you want out. That is not a good situation for Canadians to be in at this moment in time, and is certainly a factor when you combine all of these things. So you can see why they are leaving. But now the big question is how does that affect the U.S.? And how does that affect the housing market now and going forward? Now, the biggest impact on our housing market is definitely going to be inventory, more inventory. And certain areas, that's going to be a good thing. It's not necessarily going to be a bad thing. However, the areas that will be hit the hardest are going to be the areas that have the high snowbird populations. That's predominantly where these Canadians purchased homes, and those happen to be the areas that are also where we have the most inventory in the country at this moment in time. And the cities that we should watch that might be affected the most are going to be in Florida, Naples, Sarasota, Fort Myers, and Palm Beach. Arizona, we want to keep an eye on Phoenix, Scottsdale, Mesa, and Tucson. Over in Texas, Austin, San Antonio, and Houston, and over in California for our more affluent Canadian homeowners, Palm Springs, San Diego, and Orange County. Now, this will have the potential to significantly cool those markets. And that is maybe not great news from a home seller standpoint, but it will be good news from a home buyer standpoint. And what it'll do is it'll give more options to U.S. retirees down in Florida in those 55 plus communities. It'll open it up and push prices down a little bit, make it a little bit more affordable. And it'll also help regular year-round home buyers that are trying to get into the market, maybe in Texas, in the Austin area, or in Arizona. It'll push those prices down even a little bit more. So it could very, very well be super advantageous as they make this mass exodus and introduce all this new inventory. I do not believe it's going to be a flood. I do not believe, because of how deficient we are in the inventory at this moment in time, I don't believe there'll be enough inventory to flood the market and have a crash. A crash is definition of a crash is over 20% decline in home values. I don't think we'll see 20% decline in home values. I do think we will see softening and downward pressure on home values. But we will see what happens over the next coming year to see how this affects the housing market. Now, if you want more information on this type of content or housing market videos in general, you want to check out these videos. I'm Jen Sylvester. I'm here to help you become a savvy home seller.